When I was in grad school at Sarah Lawrence, I designed 2 shows at the same time. And I remember one day sitting at my console venting to my lighting mentor about how the side lights don't look right, and the back fixtures are focused wrong, and how the heck am I going to light a set when there are no scenic items in place? And he turned to me and he said, "Take a walk." And when I said, "No, I need to work," he responded, "Let's go outside for 5 minutes." So we stepped outside of the theater to a beautiful spring day. And for those of you who have never visited the Sarah Lawrence campus, there's a beautiful arbor lined with wisteria flowers during the April and May months. It was about 5 p.m. and the natural light just made everything beautiful. He turned to me and he said, "Look at this. You can't make the theatrical light in there without seeing the light out here. This is why we do it." To be an artist, you need to be a person, and that will inform the art you make. The art I make explores what archives, places that hold records and documents of history, give us access to, and just as importantly, what gaps it leaves behind. My own story starts with missing pieces. I was born in India to a nomadic tribe that communicates only through an oral language. So any records or documents of them are extremely limited. So I've become intimate with these gaps, and I've begun to think about how to creatively fill them. How can I, as a theater artist, revisit untold or unknown history? And how do I recenter those voices and perspectives with care? Currently, I do it by wearing multiple hats. I write, I design, I teach, and I direct intimacy. I was first introduced to intimacy and performance through Judy Lewis-Oprah. In her class, we learned to approach stories of intimacy the way a designer or a technician would. We learned that a particular movement of the hand or an exhale of the breath can tell a variety of different stories depending on the context of the show. The foundation of this work is built upon the dynamics of consent and what it feels like to say yes or no. In everyday life, even with a handshake, we make a choice of saying yes or no, and that is an act of consent within itself. In class, we have an exercise called the handshake game. In this game, you go around the room like you're mingling at a party, and when you make eye contact with someone, you stand in front of them, and you take a breath. And then, one of 3 things can happen. Option 1, you both extend your hand for a handshake. Option 2, one person extends their hand, and the other doesn't. Or option 3, neither person extends their hands. The first time I played this game, I was so uncomfortable because I kept thinking, oh my God, I totally hurt that person's feelings when I didn't take their hand. And physically, I felt it too. My stomach tightened and my knees locked. The stakes in this game are very low. Yes and no are equal options, and saying one doesn't mean the other is a bad choice. This game is an exercise in the empowerment of saying no and seeing how that lives in the body. Now, while this game takes place in a theatrical setting, the sensations felt are very real beyond a rehearsal room. Okay, so here's why this matters. Saying yes and no when the stakes aren't low gets more complicated. Suddenly, saying no to a project might mean rent is not going to get paid. Or saying yes might mean you're missing your best friend's wedding. That's why the building blocks of this work in intimacy, but also in life, are so important. The ability to ask questions, communicate clearly, understand exactly what's being asked of you, and to identify for yourself what is uncomfortable versus unsafe. I did an intimate scene with someone. I was in college, and I was playing a character who has a very heated makeout session with her boyfriend. Despite the fact that my scene partner and I were friends, I was still really nervous. I was worried that we would be told to just figure it out, or I'd have to draw on my own personal experience of physical intimacy to make this moment believable. Now, wonderfully, a faculty member had taken an intimacy direction theme in a course, and she navigated us through this moment. We devoted a few hours to the dramaturgy, answering questions like why this scene was occurring, what story needed to be told, and most importantly, what the boundaries between me and my fellow performer were in the context of this moment. We figured out that we would not make lip-to-lip contact. Instead, there would be a gap between our faces, and we would angle our heads further than natural, and we would move our heads from side to side for 3 counts of 5. These movements that were perceived to be sexual from an audience's view were actually carefully choreographed and remarkably unsexy. We had these hot lights on, and the entire cast and audience were staring at us. We were not comfortable, but we had built a relationship based on trust, communication, and boundaries. So we were safe, and not only were we confident in the scene that we had created together, we were also really excited to perform it. One of the most valuable skill sets that this work has given me is an awareness for the lived experiences that a person may be navigating when they come into a rehearsal room. While they may appear to be calm on the surface, internally they might be feeling something different. We call this trauma-informed care. So what exactly is that? To put it simply, it's a duck. I want you all to picture a duck swimming in a pond. To us as humans, with an overview of the water, that duck may be swimming at a nice, steady pace around this pond. But under the water, unbeknownst to us, that duck's feet may be paddling extremely fast or extremely slow. We don't know what that duck is experiencing, and that's key. We don't know another person's experience. If we're applying this to theater, let's say it's a streetcar named Desire. The way that we approach the rape of Blanche will be taken with a different amount of care than, say, the first meeting of Romeo and Juliet. We hold space, not just for the character, but for the actors themselves, and what type of care they might need to perform this role and step onto the stage. How do we make room for this very real trauma, but also continue on with the work that we are meant to do? How do we navigate discomfort while also pursuing the creative self and our desire to tell stories? In my rehearsal rooms, actors, crew, and designers all have the ability to call for a pause or tap out for a couple minutes. We hold each other and ourselves accountable. We engage in dialogue. We ask questions, and we acknowledge intent versus impact. By intent and impact, I mean that my intention of saying something or doing something might impact someone differently or even negatively. The question is, how do we move forward when we acknowledge that we've done harm? About a year ago, I directed a post-colonial Filipino space opera. We were in residency for about 9 months, and I was working alongside a team of creatives that were all exceptionally ambitious. One of my actors was also a designer in this production, and we were navigating how they would balance these 2 roles successfully. In an effort to alleviate pressure from them, I started scrapping design ideas that I thought were going to take too long to create or were perhaps excessive to the show. My intent was to take stress off them, but my impact was that they felt they were losing creative control as a designer and unable to expand their skill set in this work. We sat down together when I realized that this was an issue of specificity, communication, and again, our intent and impact on each other. Intimacy direction has informed my art, but it has also helped me as a person. In my mind, I have met my biological family 1,000 times over, and I have written the script incredibly theatrical. There are puppets and hot lights and costumes and an entire audience staring at us. But outside of the theater, in the real world, I've yet to meet them at all. I am very nervous about my own vulnerability, my own intimate hyper-exposure of self. But because of my intimacy direction training, I now have more skills to approach them with care and think critically about the internal and external dynamics that may be present when I do meet them. I have the tools I need to make sure that I am safe and that they are as well. I have the ability to sit with my discomfort. And that, in turn, will allow us to get more intimate with each other. Navigating the theater world, and in many cases, any setting, asks us to be aware of the power structures that are at hand, while also acknowledging that power is not inherently bad. But what kind of power do I hold in a room? And how can the power I possess potentially influence others? As a young South Asian woman navigating the world under increasingly conservative conditions, I ask these questions every day. What conditions am I willing to accept? When am I willing to decline a handshake? And when, through all of this, do I need to take a walk and intake the natural light? Thank you.